Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Way Too Indiecast. Before we get on with the show, and it's a really good one, I just got to tell you that we had some audio issues with the recording. You're going to hear some weird stuff. It's going to sound a little funny occasionally, but please just bear through it. It really is a great show. We had a great time recording it. Just, disregard all the ridiculousness you might hear as the show goes on. There's good stuff in there. Thank you for listening, and on with the show. Hey friends, welcome to episode 21 of the Way Too Indiecast, the official podcast of waytooindie.com. On today's show, we've got a very special guest, filmmaker Eddie Mullins, whose new film Doomsdays is getting a theatrical release in the US on June 5th. I'm very excited about that. Love that movie. We'll be talking about Doomsdays in a little bit and also sharing our top 5 favorite apocalyptic movies or post-apocalyptic. Either one. We're keeping it loose. But later on the show, I'll also be reviewing Brad Bird's live-action sci-fi spectacular Tomorrowland. We'll see how that goes. And of course, as always, we've got some fresh out the oven indie picks of the week. I'm your host, Bernard Boo. I'm a writer at Way Too Indie, coming to you from the Bay Area in California. And joining me from about 3,000 miles away is Eddie Mullins, who's chilling over there in Kingston, New York. How's it going, Eddie?
Oh, it's going great. The sun is out here. I might do a little sailing later.
Really?
Yeah, why not? I got a sunfish. I can man that by myself.
That's awesome. It's always fun talking to you. I had a great time talking to you last time. We talked a couple times for your movie.
It's true. Well, it's a mutual feeling. I keep coming back for more.
Yeah, you're a great friend of the site, and I'm really excited. We talked a while ago about Doomsdays when it came and played here at SF Indie Fest, and I really loved the movie, and we became friendly after that and talked again, and now it's finally getting a theatrical release.
Well, it was we had an epic festival run. I think I mentioned to you previously we did about 40 festivals, and we won 6 of them. But it was a good year plus on the road with that thing. So.
Yeah, and can you tell our listeners about your movie?
Absolutely. Doomsday stars Justin Rice and Leo Fitzpatrick as 2 sort of feckless squatter types who've given up on, I guess, the modern world. They earnestly believe that peak oil, just the idea that we're running out of petroleum resources, is going to bring the modern world to a very sudden and dramatic halt. And their belief is so fervent that they've decided, screw it, conventional society is not for us. So they eke out a marginal existence, breaking into unoccupied vacation homes in the Catskills and looting whatever they can find, drinking the booze, eating the food, and then moving on either when the resources run out or when someone chases them off.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's I'd say it's a comedy. It's very funny. I still tell people the Irish beans joke.
That was one of the few improvisational bits. That was a joke that the actor Brian Charles Johnson's father told him many moons ago, and we were one joke shy, and he said, "Oh, I've got one." So.
Yeah, and I think I'm not going to say the joke. I'm going to have people watch the movie to see what the joke is. But I still laugh about it. I'm just it's just funny. I think I watch comedies these days that are kind of British sophisticated comedies, and they make me laugh really hard. But nothing makes me laugh harder than stupid fart humor. Nothing.
Well, that's what I like to think my work combines, elements of the highest and the lowest art.
That's it's so true. I was about to mention that because it is a funny movie and you're a fun guy to talk to, but the film, as far as your work, your craft, is really, I think, I tell people all the time, it's immaculately crafted. The shots, the way you do with the camera is really great.
Well, I think I'm a formalist, and I really believe in the value of restraint. In this case, the idea being that we're not going to do any match cutting. We're going to try to render every scene in one shot. How do we do this? How do we create and sustain visual interest without boring the audience to death? And it's quite a challenge, but I'm certainly not the first to attempt it. I borrowed heavily from the likes of Mizoguchi Kenji and Hoshao Shen and even William Wyler. I don't know. It gave me a very specific approach to every scene.
Yeah, and for all you film geeks out there listening, this is a super film geek movie. You're gonna have a lot of fun with this. You and I, Eddie, talked last time about I think your favorite shot and my favorite shot, which takes you're shooting out a window, a second
Yes,
floor
I refer to
window.
that as my little fox's shot.
Yes, it's terrific. I mean, there's these two planes of activity, and the people switch things up. It's really fun, really inventive.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, everybody go check Doomsdays out if it's playing in a theater near you. Where can they find out where it's playing?
You can check out the Facebook page for Doomsdays. I think the theaters may or may not be up on our distributor's page yet. We're with Candy Factory Distribution. But just off the top of my head, we'll be in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Dallas, Albuquerque, Tucson, Sioux Falls, and Chicago.
That is fantastic. My boss, Dustin Jancic, who runs the site, is in Sioux Falls, so he'll be thrilled to hear that.
Outstanding. Yeah, I'm not
amazing.
Expecting a sellout crowd. I mean, not to cast any aspersions on Sioux Falls, but any additional people to swell the numbers there would be appreciated.
We're gonna make it happen. We'll see. We'll have Dustin. I'm sure will be there, so he'll let us know how it goes. But yeah, really excited about that. Now we're gonna get into our indie picks of the week, as with every show, where me and Eddie this week will pick an independent movie that we think y'all should check out pretty soon. So Eddie, I'll let you go first since you're the guest. What's your indie pick of the week?
My pick of the week is a film called Go Down Death, which is directed by Aaron Schimberg. I caught wind of this film when it played alongside Doomsdays at Fantasia in 2013. And I think to this day, I still maintain that it was my favorite film of that year. It is just a sui generis piece of work. I think second only to my film in terms of its originality. Films made that year. The entire thing, it's shot in black and white. It was shot entirely in a warehouse in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, which for that reason makes me want to compare it to the works of Roy Anderson. He did songs from the Second Floor and You the Living, who also shoots all of his work in a single location. But the picture takes place in some sort of imaginary world. It's theoretically based on the writings of a fictitious poet named John Mallory Sinus. There's a lot of soldiers on the periphery of a war. There's a weird cabaret where there's a lot of people with physical disabilities. Conjures up a little bit of Jodorowsky, I think, in its obsession with illness and decrepitude and things. It really, I think it's been falsely compared to the work of Guy Madden and maybe early David Lynch, but I don't think that's apt at all. I think this has its own totally unique approach, and it's just underseen. It didn't play any more than a handful of festivals, but I think it's an extraordinary gem and worth seeking out. Factory 25, the New York-based distribution company, has put it out, and it's available now.
Man, I'm really excited about that one. I think you told me about that as well. And I'm really looking forward to that. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I think unfortunately, a lot of critics either missed or misunderstood it, but I'm doing my level best to reverse the trend.
That's good. That's what we're all about here at Way Too Indie. And I've also got, for my indie pick, a movie that I'm pretty sure, sadly, is going to get lost in the shuffle, but I'd like to give it a little shout out now. It's Brett Haley's I'll See You in My Dreams. It's kind of a humble but also moving character portrait of this long-widowed, peacefully retired elderly woman named Carol, and she's played by Blythe Danner. Carol lives in a cozy retirement community with her dog Hazel, and a common day for her is kind of, mildly eventful at best. When she's forced to put Hazel down, it's a really kind of heart-wrenching scene early in the film. It scrambles Carol, and any semblance of stability she had in her life, with the encouragement of her three closest friends. They're played by June Squibb, Rael Perlman, and Mary Kay Place. who like with Dana are kind of like a neo Golden Girls. Carol gets a chance at romance again with their encouragement after years of neglecting that part of her life. She tries speed dating, then it ends up being a disaster, but she gets two male presences in her life kind of organically. There's this broom mustache cowboy dude named Bill, who's played by Sam Elliott, and she also has a pool cleaner who's this kind of suburban hipster played by Martin Starr. I think the thing I like best about this movie is that it shows so much control by Danner and also Brett Haley, who's like in his 20s and made this movie about this old woman. But, you know, it's about Carol, this old woman who's coping with death and how it's kind of taking over a lot of aspects of her life. But, you know, I think a lot of actors have a tendency to overplay roles like this where they kind of over emote everything and every dramatic scene gets turned up to 11, but Danner is much more gentle than that. She doesn't amplify anything unnecessarily, and like in my review for the movie I wrote something really pretentious. I said that like kind of instead of having a brutal grappling match with Death himself, she kind of puts her head on Death's chest and slow dances with him. I think she's really just graceful and sensitive, and it's about her accepting death and acquiescing with death. And yeah, like I'm really just amazed that the director Brett Haley is so young, and he made this really authentic feeling movie about old women. And yeah, please go see this movie. It's really lovely, and it's in theaters now. I hopefully people see it instead of Tomorrowland, which I'll review later.
Oh boy.
Have you seen either of those movies?
I haven't, though there was no question of me ever going to see Tomorrowland. I now will give fair consideration to I'll See You in My Dreams. I think I had not heard of it until I just saw a little print ad in the Times or something, and I thought, oh, Blood Nanner. So we'll see. We'll see if I have an opportunity, I'll catch it on the big screen.
Yeah, well, I know you're a busy guy, so I'm sure you'll be able to catch it down the road as well when it when it gets released. But you mentioned Blythe Danner. She's still gorgeous, man. Like she is beautiful.
I think I might prefer her over her daughter.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. She. I think she is that pretty. But yeah, I'll See You in My Dreams, and Go Down Death. Both films you guys should definitely check out, supporting the independent scene. But now we're going to get into our first major segment of the show, which is our favorite apocalyptic / post-apocalyptic movies. That's such a catchy title. But, you know, I didn't want to kind of limit ourselves there. But I think it's, you know, even though Doomsdays isn't technically a post-apocalyptic movie,
it's a pre-apocalyptic movie.
It's a pre-apocalyptic movie. That's right. Maybe I should have added that to the headline. But yeah. Do you enjoy this kind of subgenre? I think we've been really kind of obsessed with this subject matter for, you know, the past 20 years. Almost every other movie is about apocalypse.
Yeah, it's strange. There's a what do they call it? There's a kind of gray area term that if I was more of a sci-fi, it's like speculative fiction or something. Like The Road, for example. I know Michael Chabon has written about this. It's sort of it's kind of a science fiction film, but there's no science fiction elements. I think a lot of apocalyptic films sort of fall into this middle ground. There may or may not be a supernatural element or a science fiction element involved in the quote-unquote apocalypse. I think I tend to favor the ones that hew closer to reality.
Right, yeah, me too. I like grounded movies like your own, and I think we've just kind of fallen in love like with nihilism in our society and pessimism, and I think people really love that stuff. I mean, even kind of kids or teenager movies these days are always based around the world blowing up or you know, everything getting wiped out.
In a very perverse way, I've sort of been hoping that there will be some sort of earthquake in in Los Angeles or in California, Southern California, of course.
Thank you.
Just so that this new The Rock movie, San Andreas,
San Andreas. Yeah.
will be exposed as the most tasteless and inappropriate thing that Hollywood has generated in a long time. It'll make Showgirls seem like a very, very morally upright piece of work that offends no one.
Oh, how fantastic would that be? I mean, I wish no. I wish
Sure,
no.
I know we're dangerous ground here. I don't actually pray for an earthquake. I just want the Rock's movie.
Well, I think you've just inadvertently gotten in bed with that movie. And, like, if this happens, then you're right there with them. You're sinking in that ship.
It's true. We'll all go down together.
I'll jump in too. But let's get into our list. I'll let you go first. What is your number 5 favorite?
Oh my goodness, I did not rank them.
Oh, okay. Well, what's one of them then?
One of my picks is A Boy and His Dog.
Mm-hmm.
Which is do you know the film? It's by L.Q. Jones. It stars Don Johnson and his telepathic dog named Blood. And it's based on I believe a series of short pieces by that famously cranky sci-fi writer Harlan Ellison.
Yes.
But Don Johnson and Blood. I mean, the thing that I love the most about the film is just their relationship. The telepathic dog, it's just sort of like dubbed. His mouth doesn't move. Don Johnson talks, and then you just sort of hear the dog's thoughts. But owing to the same genetic mishap that gave the dog the telepathic skills has also made it impossible for him to hunt on his own. So he relies on Don Johnson to feed him, and in return he helps Don Johnson find women. And that's kind of the point of the film. They're just sort of exploring this wasteland, looking for people for Don Johnson to have sex with and food for the dog to eat. There's a whole, he gets lured into this underground sort of world that's kind of a throwback to pre-World War II, and they want him to impregnate all of these women, and there's a whole scenario. But it ultimately comes down in the end to Don Johnson's character having to make a choice between whether he wants to live with a woman or live with this dog, and I won't ruin it. It's pretty amazing. That's a very, very cheaply made film. It's got, to me anyway, a lot of camp humor in it. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I'll share my I'll share my number 5 post-apocalyptic pick right now. And to start off my list, I've got a bit of a weird one, and this one kind of makes the word favorite in favorite apocalyptic movies very operative. But I'm not saying like it's the best movie ever, but I got immense enjoyment when I was a kid out of Don Bluth and Gary Goldman's 2000 animated outer space post-apocalyptic adventure Titan AE.
Whoa!
Yeah. You remember that one?
I do. I haven't seen it though.
Yeah, it stars Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, Drew Barrymore, John Leguizamo, Nathan Lane, Janine Garofalo, Ron Perlman, and even Tone Loc. In this movie, it's a lot of fun. It takes place in 3028 AD when humans have kind of mastered space travel and have developed relationships with different alien species, and the humans invent something called Project Titan, and this pisses off one of those species, the Dredge, these kind of evil aliens, and the Dredge, as a reaction, blow up the Earth and the Moon. So this is very much a post-apocalyptic movie. The location of Project Titan, this thing that the humans built, is unknown, but there's this young angsty guy, kind of a Han Solo-ish dude named Kale, played by Matt Damon, and he and a bunch of his friends and comrades kind of get in this space pirate ship and go out to find Titan before the Dredge do, and of course Kale, played by Matt Damon, has the key to finding Titan. I remember when this came out in 2000, Star Wars Episode 1 had just come out, like the year before, and it kind of crushed my dreams and destroyed me as far as sci-fi is concerned. But I think this movie saved me a little bit from that depression because it was such a fun, like cool-looking deep space adventure. The animation was super awesome. It's like a hybrid of both hand-drawn and computer imagery, and it was also a more of an adult feeling movie than the Disney stuff that was so popular in the 90s, even though I did love that stuff very much. The art direction's great. I love the look of this movie so much. And if you go back and like look at a trailer, you'll immediately notice a striking similarity between Titan AE and James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy from last year. Very similar
Oh,
outer space aesthetics. But yeah, man, if you haven't seen it, I'd say it's very much worth checking out.
all right, I'm on it.
Yeah, dude, it's a lot of fun. What is your number 4 pick?
I picked a film called No Blade of Grass.
Wow.
It's directed by a guy named Cornell Wilde. Again, this sort of gets into the sort of gritty realism of what a post-apocalyptic scenario might look like. What happens is there's some sort of mysterious plague that's ruining all the food supplies in England, and there are these terrible food riots. And so this one particular family decides that they need to escape to Scotland. I think it would not be unfair to call this an exploitation film.
Mm.
It owes a little bit or shares a little bit in common with your original Mad Max picture, and that there's marauding biker gangs whose raison d'etre apparently is just rape. Period. They're really, awful people start to run amok, and the family stays together, but they have to make a lot of really difficult decisions along the way, and people's romantic ties end up changing as they find certain people more reliable than others. It's really some grim stuff, actually. Played out in a very closely observed kind of way. There are some weird artistic flourishes where they'll be sort of flashing red and white tinted images and things. I always love when indie films try to get creative with their or limited budget films. I don't
That's
think the word
cool. Yeah.
indie was around at the time this makes. It's from the 70s, but try to get creative with their meager resources. It's just, I don't know. Again, a kind of overlooked gem. I think it was put out by the Warner Brothers archive a couple years ago, and that's how it came to my attention. But I've been passing that disc around from friend to friend to friend, with very few complaints. So if you ever have the occasion, do seek it out.
That sounds incredible. Yeah, that sounds so fun. Also sounds like the kind of movie that would really inspire like a filmmaker like yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it again. I like the doing a little with a lot, and I think this film does just that. Its ambitions are small in terms of showing. There's not a lot of elaborate set pieces or something, but in terms of showing the human cost of and the human drama of a scenario like this, it succeeds beautifully.
Terrific. I'm really excited to check that out. Have never even heard of it, so that's a gift from you to us.
I'm an obscurist.
Yeah, it's great. That's amazing. That's what we love about you here. My number 4 pick is A Boy and His Dog.
Whoa!
Yeah, that's why I didn't react when you made it your number 5 pick. I love this movie. It's one of the kind of my favorite weirdo movies I can share with people, and I think people get a kick of when they find out that Don Johnson's in it and he's so young. I actually think Don Johnson is more handsome now than he was when he was a kid, but still a good looking dude. You already very well explained. Well,
it used to play as a midnight film in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, when I was too young to be able to attend things like that. But I recall hearing the advertisements on the radio, and they always tried to pitch it as this vaguely, pornographic kind of movie, and that the announcer would always be very suggestive, a boy and his dog. And I just thought, oh boy, that's gonna be Tits McGee. I got to see that. That turned out to be a little something other than what they had led me to believe. I think it was playing alongside, like Rocky Horror Picture Show and maybe Halloween or something. Whatever they thought the kids were going to get excited about in the mid '80s.
Yeah, I love it. I love this movie. I watched it again recently in preparation for this episode, and it's super fun sci-fi. Like there are like mutants and like robots, and I love the relationship between the boy Vic, played by Don Johnson, and his dog Blood, who was voiced by Tim McIntyre, who I've never heard of. Uh,
Nor I.
yeah, I never heard of that actor, but he does a great job in this film, and I think yeah, we're kind of almost in lockstep there with our.
Well, it's nice, I mean, the old adage about great minds clearly is appropriate here.
Yeah, it's a fun pick. But now let's get into your number three pick. I know you didn't rank these, but I'm just gonna say it's your number three number three pick.
I went with again. I feel like I like the ones that are especially trenchant and unpleasant in their depictions of apocalypse scenarios. I went with Peter Watkins' The War Game.
Ooh.
Now, this is a mockumentary of what the fallout of a nuclear attack would look like in the United Kingdom. And this is really grim stuff. Black and white, verite style footage, just people, trying to keep it together, but in the face of mass deaths and food rationing, it's really a nightmarish imagining of what the very immediate sort of post-nuclear explosion existence would be like. And I feel like Peter Watkins really, he has a tremendous social conscience, and he made a similar film later, not similar, but an equally worthy film called Punishment Park that sort of did the same thing about police brutality and a hypothetical future in which criminals are forced to basically endure being hunted by police predators in
Whoa.
an open air park, and if they get from A to B in time, they're allowed to live. So I like I like the social awareness. You and I, when we first met, started talking about Yasuzo Masumura,
Yes.
who has a similar sort of commitment to social themes, and I like that Watkins is approaching it from that angle. That he's not, there's nothing of the fantasist or science fiction of fantasist of his work at all. He's very much got a specific social point on his mind.
Wow. That's another great pick, man. I feel like you're gonna show me up here. These are so fun. They're so cool. I'm gonna take these home, and I'm gonna do my studying, and I'm gonna watch these. Very cool. My number three, I think, is more. This is definitely not not an obscure pick like your gloriously obscure picks. It's probably one that's on a lot of people's post-apocalyptic lists. It's Chris Marker's La Jetée, the 1962 French science fiction short set in a post-World War III Paris. It follows a man rigged up by scientists to reach the past and future via time travel to save their present world, using a fuzzy memory of a woman and a man moments before his murder on an observation platform as kind of the mental gateway through time. The man is eventually able to travel through time, and he does get aid from the future, and even finds love in the past, but the shocking ultimate consequence of his actions is something that he both did and didn't see coming. The story is famously told almost entirely in still black and white photographs, and it's one of those movies that kind of really captured my imagination when I was in film class in high school and on through college. The movie, of course, went on to inspire 12 Monkeys. No reinterpretation, in my opinion, could ever kind of approach the brilliance of this thing. It's sublime, really. I think it also says a lot, both politically and about human nature. About the lengths we'll go when we're looking doom straight in the face. I still watch this one, kind of, like I think every year I watch La Jetée.
Well, it's a short picture. I mean, it's worth
Yeah.
revisiting. I think wasn't there like maybe one, like someone opens an eye or something. I think there's maybe a
There's one shot,
single.
yeah. There's
Yeah,
one shot that's not still.
that's it.
Yeah, wonderful. Did you watch that one like in film school or anything?
Oh, I think I was hip to it, and I may have seen it at a film screening in high school or something. I feel like I've been aware of it for ages, but I didn't look at it for about 15 years for whatever reason. So I was turning it on to I had a friend who professes to be a big sci-fi buff who'd never seen it, and I roundly scolded him and made him sit down and watch it immediately. So I've seen it pretty recently.
Yeah, it blows my mind. But let's get to number two. What's your number two
Well, this is
apocalyptic pick?
a more conventional choice than the ones I've made thus far, but I went with Children of Men.
All right.
I simply love this picture, and again, to reiterate, my fondness for formal rigor. I just think the way that the art direction in this film, and moreover the camera work, are astonishing. I won't
Yeah.
go into a lengthy exploration of the plot because I feel like it's a fairly well-known film. But suffice it to say, that something is afflicting the women of the world. There have been no children for something like 15 or 20 years, and then Clive Owen is through an ex-girlfriend and brought into the fold of this the human project, or this group of people. Anyway, they've discovered that there is a pregnant girl, and he needs to shepherd this girl and her unborn child away from this cult of people who would I don't know, seek to use the baby to their own selfish ends, and get it to the Human Project, which is this sort of vague organization off the coastline that's going to repopulate the earth, et cetera, et cetera. But there's so many beautifully orchestrated, long takes
Oh yeah.
in this film, and you get this real sort of 360 sense of the world gone awry. They shot all over the world. I think part of it was shot in Argentina, and some was shot in Montevideo, and all these. I can't think of anything that creates such a fully believable world like this one, at least not in recent sci-fi memory. There's I don't know that there's a whole lot of special effects. Everything's
Right.
really grounded. When they go into the prison camp in the end, it's just it's amazing. It's sort of what Bartertown would actually look like. It's
Right.
not a lot of midgets and people in fancy leather dress. It's I think it would be much more akin to what this film presents. And of course, the DP, it's the same gentleman who just shot Birdman.
Right.
And I guess he goes back and forth between working with Inaritu and this guy, but I love it.
Yeah, that would probably be my number six. Barely missed my list. That movie, I think, just has such a weight to it. It's very tactile and immediate. It's right in your face, especially that famous car scene, which will blow your mind. Like, you'll never be able to watch that and not be entertained or awe-stricken. Love
I think
that.
I unfriended someone who didn't care for it, and I don't mean I unfriended him on Facebook. I unfriended him, in the street.
In his face.
We are done.
And you asked him to pull your finger.
No, he said, geez, Mullins normally has such good taste. I can't understand why he's so in the tank for this terrible movie. And it's like, we're finished.
Oh, God.
That's it.
That is a no-no, for sure. Great pick. My number two is a movie I love very much. It was a recent film from 2011. It's called Take Shelter by writer-director Jeff Nichols. It stars Michael Shannon as Curtis, a husband and father living in Ohio with his wife, played by Jessica Chastain, and his deaf daughter, played by Tova Stewart. Curtis starts having these sinister kind of lucid dreams that he believes are premonitions. He sees a storm rip his house apart. He sees his own dog attack him, and so this stuff scares him so much he decides to take action in his waking life to prevent these visions from ever happening. He starts dipping into the family funds to reinforce their storm shelter, which doesn't go over so well with the wife since they're saving up for a cochlear implant for their daughter. But basically the movie follows him as his mind starts to unravel and these visions of destruction begin to destroy his life through him. This pick is more about a personal apocalypse than your conventional worldwide apocalypse, but I think it's, the overall sense of doom and sort of end days make this a valid choice. This is my absolute favorite performance by Michael Shannon, who really acts with his whole body here. The cool thing about Take Shelter from the whole mental instability angle is that Curtis is completely aware that he's going insane the whole time. he's almost helpless to stop it, and that dovetails nicely with another theme in the film, which has to do with family and how, as a supportive unit, we're all able to stand much stronger against scary stuff like devastating thunderstorms. This is my favorite film by Nichols, and that's saying a lot because his other two films, Shotgun Stories and Mud, are really great as well. He's got Midnight Special starring Adam Driver, Kirsten Dunst, and Joel Edgerton coming out later this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. But Take Shelter is one of my favorites.
I enjoyed Take Shelter, but I, in fact, am more of a Shotgun Stories man.
Yeah, that's a great film, man.
I
That's
love
a great
this
film.
picture. Absolutely. Mud didn't. I think it was actually the biggest indie success of that year, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm more of a fan of the first two, Take Shelter and Shotgun Stories. Mud seemed a little like watered down, which is probably why it was so successful.
Yeah, I do like Take Shelter better than Mud, and Shotgun Stories is just really close with Take Shelter. They're actually kind of similar thematically as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this was really really kind of pricked my ears up when I saw Michael Shannon and his performance. But now we're down to the wire. This is our final pick.
Well, before I get to it, I want to make a footnote that the DP who I could not recall before was Emmanuel Lubezki.
There you go.
Yes, I didn't want to escape without mentioning him because he's kind of in a non-pareil, I think, category these days. My number one, which may come as something of an anticlimax, is naturally La Jetée.
All right.
And since we've already covered that ground, I was thinking, an interesting footnote that what might be a lovely double feature would be to pair this film with Robert Downey Sr.'s Chafed Elbows.
Okay.
which is the only other picture that I can think of that has an equally inventive use of still frames. He does shoot a few more live action sequences, but the majority of the film is done with still frames. And I believe the film, despite its relative obscurity, was something of a success because
Wow.
it only cost $12,000 to produce. I think he had the photographs done at a Rite Aid or something.
That's
So
awesome.
I feel that there's so many plaudits and accolades that I don't need to pile them anymore on La Jetée. So my little side note is to pair it with Chafed Elbows.
Doing good work there, my friend. That is a good move right there. La Jetée and Chafed Elbows. Let's make that a double feature. Everybody listening, let's do that and talk about it later. But my number one pick, definitely one of my favorites, which I'd still say is one of my favorites, even though I was very much more in love with it when I was younger, is 28 Days Later. It's the 2003 Danny Boyle film about a rotating crew of survivors trying to outrun a rage zombie outbreak in England. It's kind of
It's
a
appropriate that you use the word outrun.
yeah, it's really really fast paced film. It's a widely beloved film that it stars Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris, Noah Huntley, Brendan Gleeson, Christopher Eccleston, and more. Great cast. The thing that makes this film just so kinetic, like you said, and kind of ballsy, is that there's a real sense of locomotion to it. They're always on the move, both narratively and visually. These zombies are terribly frightening because they run really fast and behave kind of like rabid dogs. I love the performances by Murphy and Naomi Harris, who made her debut here. And there's really great chemistry between them, and the romance is nuanced and not, they're not hitting you over the head with it. And honestly, when I started thinking about this topic for this show, one of the first images that came to mind was that incredible shot at the beginning of the film with that empty street in London, with Cillian Murphy kind of sauntering through it in the scrubs he got from the hospital he woke up in. I love that shot is practical and they actually cleared the street. And I love how vicious this movie is, how merciless it is. And while the ending didn't really leave me 100% satisfied, it's still a movie that I watch to this day. The Blu-ray version of it sucks. I bought the Blu-ray.
Oh no!
Look, it's terrible because Boyle shot it on digitally. He shot it on video instead of film, so it's on Blu-ray. It just looks like shit because it wasn't shot at in high enough resolution. So it looks
That's
terrible.
disappointing.
You could get it for like $2 though. So it's
Right. It's nice when disappointment comes cheap.
yeah, that's the best way to be disappointed, is on the cheap. Those are our top 5 apocalyptic film picks that we missed. There's so many. I mean, I guess as honorable mentions, I'd like to say like the Mad Max movies are probably on a lot of people's lists. We mentioned The Road earlier. 12 Monkeys we mentioned. I Am Legend. A lot of people like that movie. I didn't really like it, but it's there.
Well, I Am Legend is actually the third time that material has been reworked, because there was Omega Man.
Yeah. And then
And
Last
then
Man
there
on
was,
Earth.
and then Jean-Luc Godard did something with it, maybe for his Rogo Paga, was it? Or, one of these omnibus films he contributed to. I think he used the same material as well, which is, I don't think comes up very often, because, Godard's work fairly regularly looks nothing like what he claims was the inspiration. So I think that's often overlooked. But I Am Legend didn't send me. I would have included maybe Night of the Comet, not especially because I think it's a good film, but I find the performances in that picture so strange. They're like weirdly flat and self-conscious. I mean, there's almost a I don't know. It's a joke that never pays off. It almost seems Bressonian at times. Yeah, I like enigmatic things like that.
That's cool. Yeah, I think the Terminator movies would probably be on a lot of people's list, as would Planet of the Apes. All of those. It's funny. There. I think I looked up. In preparation, I looked up a bunch of lists like this, similar to this one. Is Zardoz?
I wanted to say Zardoz just because I thought, that sounds like the kind of thing I would pick, but I haven't seen that film in about 20 years, and I had nothing to say about it except for, some great costumes. You want to see Connery wearing a sheet with an unusual mustache and a laser gun. And then I thought Rollerball, but I don't actually think that fits. I think that's just purely sci-fi.
Yeah, Rollerball. Yeah.
In the future, there will be no war. There will only be
Rollerball.
The original, of course. None of this LL Cool J crap. Talking James Caan all the way.
That's amazing. Yeah, a lot of apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic, apocalyptic films that we could have picked. But listeners, let us know what was on your list and maybe what you would have liked to have heard us talk about. Maybe we'll talk about it later. That's going to do it for this segment of the show. Eddie, such a pleasure to have you on again.
Bernard, thank you so much for having me. I dig it the most.
It's the best of times. We'll do this again later on. I hope to have you on, and I look forward to your future work. Can you tell us what you're working on and what we can expect from you later?
Sure. Well, broad strokes, I have a Western that I'm finishing up right now that's probably too costly for anyone to let me direct. So I'm looking either to sell or produce that. And then I'll be shooting a much more modest, more significant than Doomsdays, but less, more modest than the Western picture of my own next year, called Shooting the Pilot.
Shooting the Pilot. Oh man, I'm gonna look forward to your stuff from now on. You really won me over with Doomsdays. Love that movie, and you can find out more about Doomsdays at doomsdaysmovie.com. Where can we find you on Twitter, Eddie?
I think I'm at Eddie Mullins XXX, but I have to confess I'm rather poor at the tweeting. I'm trying to ramp it up here as we draw nigh to the film opening, but. Yeah, Eddie Mullins XXX. I've got to do something. I'm embarrassed to even say that. XXX. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, maybe we'll get that going for the theatrical release, and we'll get that theater in Sioux Falls packed for you.
I appreciate it. Your lips to God's ears.
Yes, that's right. Thanks so much, Eddie. I'll talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Take care. You're listening to the Way Too Indiecast, the official podcast of WayTooIndie.com, where you'll find film news, reviews, and interviews with an emphasis on indie. Follow us on Twitter at Way2Indie and like us on Facebook. All right, welcome back to the show, guys. That was a lot of fun talking to Eddie Mullins about Doomsdays. I really do, again, want to urge you guys to go see that. But what I don't want to urge you guys to see is Tomorrowland, which I'm going to be reviewing right now. It's Brad Bird's second foray into the world of live action filmmaking. His first one was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which I liked a lot. I had a lot of fun with that movie. And other than his live action stuff, Brad Bird's made like The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, Ratatouille. I mean, these movies are really cherished by a lot of people, including me, and it cemented him as one of my favorite filmmakers, honestly. I really have so many fond memories of all the movies that he's made as in the animation realm, but now to get back on topic, we've got Tomorrowland, his new film. It stars George Clooney, Hugh Laurie, a youngster called Raffi Cassidy, and also Britt Robertson in the lead role, or I guess the co-lead role with Mr. Clooney. But this movie, I said in my review that this is a certifiable disappointment, both because of Brad Bird's oeuvre up to this point, which I've enjoyed almost across the board, but also because, okay, this is a Disney movie named after Tomorrowland, like one of the areas in Disneyland, which I and millions of other people have so many fond memories of. I had a great time. I've had a great time in Tomorrowland into my adult life, from my child life into my adult life. I love it there. It's so much fun. This movie's not fun at all. That's not true. There's some fun parts in this movie, but you can tell probably that it left a sour taste in my mouth. I think what really happened here was that Bird and co-writer Damon Lindelof just wanted to, I don't know, their aspirations, I think, were a little too high or a little misguided. What they did was they made this film that should be dazzling and fun and effervescent, at least a little bit. You know, I'm sure that, of course, there's supposed to be drama in there, and that's okay, but here what they've made is a movie that kind of has this finger-wagging, preachy tone to it. It's about how young people essentially should stop being pessimistic, stop complaining about everything, and go be a doer, be a dreamer. Make a better tomorrow. There's been this trend over the past maybe 20, 25 years of just cynicism and nihilism that's been almost poisoning our minds. People are so fascinated with this stuff, like we talked about earlier in my conversation with Eddie. And it's a noble thing that they're trying to do here. They're trying to make people more hopeful for the future. The message is good that Bird and Lindelof are trying to deliver, but they mess it up because it just gets kind of sullied as the movie goes on. The story follows George Clooney's character, whose name is Frank. He's this scientist, and the movie starts with Frank as a young boy going to the World's Fair in New York in the 60s, like the mid-60s, and he's got this jetpack that he's hoping to enter into this inventors competition. It's like this homemade jetpack made of a vacuum cleaner. It's really cute. And an arrogant judge kind of turns him down, and this freckle-faced girl named Athena takes a liking to him, and instead of him entering the competition, Athena gives him this pin with a T on it, and that gains Frank access to Tomorrowland, which is this kind of alternate future, or far-off future, one of the two, that was built by the world's brightest minds to be a sort of breeding ground for the world's forward thinkers and big dreamers to unlock their true potential. It's really cool when we see this glimpse of Tomorrowland, because there are like these floating pools just hanging there in the middle of the air, and they're shaped like petri dishes, and you see people jump into one of the pools and pop out the bottom and land in another floating pool that's underneath it. Really inventive. See flying cars of all shapes and sizes, always cool to see. Jetpacks that actually work, unlike Frank's, which that's a cute thing. But yeah, it was really fun. But then the goddamn movie cuts it off, and we're zipped to Britt Robertson's character, Casey, who's living in the present. She's this kind of rebel teenager who is trying to delay the dismantling of a NASA launch pad in her hometown of Cape Canaveral. She's recruited by Athena as well, somehow, who hasn't aged a day. The freckle-faced girl who, you might kind of guess that she's little more or less than human. But anyways, in the present day, Athena leads Casey to Frank, who is now this old curmudgeon played by George Clooney. He says, "Ah, hell," all the time to kind of sell us on his curmudgeon-ness. But somehow Athena and Casey convince him to go back to Tomorrowland to save it, and what they find there is that Hugh Laurie, the same guy who played the judge who turned down Frank at the World's Fair, has built this machine that is spreading negativity and fear of the future in our world. It's kind of this barely disguised skewering of modern media and news outlets. Ironically, it comes across like an off-base observation of the new generation's intellect and temperament. I mean, young people these days do have a fascination with dystopian future, a troublingly romantic one. But they're not idiots. They're not helpless. There's a difference between cynicism and skepticism, and I don't believe young people are little emo sacks of inaction, like Burt and Lindelof seem to suggest by the way they make the movie's messaging so, on the nose and condescending. I think young people are smarter than that. And even though this is a good message, I think the way they deliver it is a little insulting, to be honest. The tone of it just sounds kind of passive aggressive and not really inspiring like they meant it to be. Another issue I have with the film is that, Tomorrowland is supposed to be all about this bigness. There's all these big ideas and big visual effects and big action, but the movie feels small. It feels tiny. And this is about scale. When the movie starts off with this big sense of grandeur, we see Tomorrowland and it looks cool and it's bright and shiny like we expected. That's fun and that's inspiring. But the story scale shrinks as the movie goes on, and by the time we get to the finale, honestly, like the fate of two worlds is being fought over by 4 white people in a computer-generated room. And I say in my review, I specify them as being white because I think it's offensive that a film that claims to be about this global message suggests that the world can be a brighter place, but only once the human race's potential is unlocked by Caucasian geniuses. Like at the end of the film, we see this montage of dreamers all looking to the sky, all across the world, all different ethnicities. Where the hell were they for the rest of the film? It was all white people fighting over our fate, our collective fate as a world. And then thank God for George Clooney and Britt Robertson, because now all the Asian people like me and all the black people and Indian people, now they have the key to Tomorrowland. Because we were saved by George Clooney and Britt Robertson. It was ridiculous. It was really, I'm sure not everyone will notice that or be offended by that, and that's totally okay. That's just my opinion, my perspective. The acting, I don't know if I had an issue with it, but it was okay. Like, George Clooney was good. He's always good. Doesn't really give you anything to write home about here. Robertson is okay. Like, her job, of course, is to sell the visual effects. Like, she looks up in astonishment at all these things that aren't really there, and, it's that art that Jennifer Lawrence has kind of become a grandmaster at. Robertson's okay. But Cassidy, who's like the youngest cast member, she's really, really good. She really excels, and she delivers her lines with maturity, almost as much maturity as Clooney and Hugh Laurie. You'll see her like standing in the frame, like on the side or in the background, and she's just reacting with her face and body to Clooney and Robertson's banter or the fight that Clooney's having with Hugh Laurie. And most of the time, when she's just kind of back there on the periphery, she's the best thing on screen. And that's saying a lot when we're talking about people like George Clooney. The other thing that was really weird to me was the violence in this movie. It's kind of strange because people definitely get murdered here. There are these evil robots that chase down the troop of main characters in the present day in our world, and they just shoot people. And these people dematerialize and atomize until they're just like a pile of human remains. And it's kind of off-putting, especially, again, we have to remind ourselves this is Tomorrowland. Lots of kids are going to be seeing this movie. And also the cyborgs, the robots I'm talking about, they look like people. And for example, there's an early scene at Frank's house, older Frank, where he set up his little creaky house with a bunch of futuristic booby traps. And these cyborgs get eaten up by these booby traps, like literally shredded into little pieces and mangled. And even though they're robots, they look like people, so it's kind of disturbing. And there's even a shot where Brett Robertson is smashing one of the robots' faces with a baseball bat. I personally just did not care for that stuff. I thought it was too violent, unnecessarily violent. It didn't even add much drama to the proceedings. I think it was kind of like a Disney-fied version of Saw. So yeah, I wasn't feeling that. You know, in addition to the big message that the film has, there's also this kind of character arc with Frank, which is what you'd expect it to be. Young Casey and Athena reignite the can-do spirit he lost as a young boy. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't really, it's nothing we haven't seen before in these kinds of movies. So even though it's not bad, it's just something that doesn't really spark anything in us, ironically, even though it's about them sparking something in old grumpy Frank. But it just really hurts me that Brad Bird, who is so near and dear to my heart, has made such a clunker of a film. This film fits into his filmography only to the extent that it's about people trying to maximize their potential as human beings. This thread runs throughout all his work. But in almost every other respect, this movie is just a mess. It's ideologically confused and it's contrived. And it's about, optimism, but all that pervades as you watch this movie is pessimism. The ultimate message is optimism, but we see it in this kind of half-hearted way at the end. And it's in a way where we kind of think, oh, we know that this kind of cynical thinking leads nowhere. We just, young people just happen to think it's kind of cool. I think they're aware that type of thinking doesn't really help anybody. And I think it's something we all grow out of, and we don't need Tomorrowland's help to make us better people in this way. I just think this thing by Bird and Lindelof is totally off base and out of touch and does not deliver on anything you'd expect from this kind of movie. On the site, I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. Don't see it. There are better movies out there, like the Blythe Danner movie, I'll See You in My Dreams, which I mentioned earlier in the show. And a bunch of those apocalyptic movies me and Eddie talked about earlier. That was a more fun time. The good old days when I had Eddie on here and we were having fun talking about apocalyptic movies. But for now, that's my Tomorrowland review. Thank you for joining me on the show. You can find me on Twitter at BJ_Boo. Find Way Too Indie on Twitter at Way Too Indie. Like us on Facebook. Find us on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. And check out the site as well. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on over there. A few Cannes reviews. If you're following the Cannes Film Festival news. Lots of exciting stuff always going on. Tell your friends about Way Too Indie. You can find the Way Too Indiecast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Subscribe to us on one of those or both. There's never too much love to go around. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, and thank you to Eddie Mullins for joining me as well. See you later.